Last year, we closed the books around 5.6 million. My company was at its peak profitability at 2.7, but I personally was miserable. Most service companies, they seem to experience this around the $2 to $5 million mark.
What's going on, guys? So today I'm here with Kris Cook. Kris is the founder of KC Power Clean. He founded them in 2006, and they've now become one of the largest exterior cleaning businesses on the West Coast. So Kris, just want to say thank you for hopping on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael.
For sure. Now, before we dive into it, just to kind of establish that credibility, do you mind just kind of sharing what your annual revenue for the business looks like, as well as how many team members you guys currently have?
Last year, we closed the books around 5.6 million, and we have at the moment around 42 W2, but we also have a good team offshore. And in the last couple of years, we've really invested a lot into a lot of the virtual assistants, and a lot of our back office is hinged around that. So there's about 13 full-time contract laborers that we use as well there.
Wow. So like nearly 60 team members currently?
Yeah, right around the 50, 55 range, because in the winter we'll shrink down and unfortunately lose a couple of the lower technicians just because of seasonality, but we may shrink down to 37 W2 in the winter, but somewhere in that 55 range is fair.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I guess, again, we can take this in a few directions, but I guess if you want to start off, I'd love to learn a bit more about the team and kind of like the dynamic behind the business. What does a structure of the business look like in order to run a $5 million per year operation?
Good question. For me, and this could differ, but I read a book years ago by an author, Greg Crabtree, and it's called Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits. And I think he was like a accounting guru who really helped a lot of service and contractor businesses. And he spoke to a phenomenon he witnessed called the black hole. And he said most service companies, they seem to experience this around the $2 to $5 million mark. And he was speaking in generality. My company was at its peak profitability at 2.7, but I personally was miserable. I was like a workaholic. I was going 68 to 75 plus hours every single week. And I was the one that was the linchpin holding it all together with my right-hand man, Cole. I don't want to discredit him because he really, it still took like an integrator, even though we didn't formally call our relationship like a visionary integrator one, that from a traction or EOS philosophy, which we now incorporate today. But that's when I started reaching out for some help and met Brandon Vaughn. And through the Conquer community and Brandon's mentorship really helped bring out a little bit of a leadership and a structure within myself and for my company. And we've self-implemented EOS from the traction book. So we're big believers in having an operating system. We couldn't, for anyone who's really looking to grow their business, I know E-Myth is a commonly referenced book about talking about the need for systems. And it's a great book, but I think traction takes it even a step further because it really provides a playbook on how to do it, what to call it, not just speaking to the high level need of it. And big fan of that. So the last several years has helped us break through this black hole, if you will, that was earlier referenced. And it really takes a team to scale past a certain mark, and you have to develop some level of a corporate structure with different departments and data or scorecards and a common shared vision, mission, and values. All those things are super important, which is kind of funny for me to look back and laugh on that as a guy who started the thing just washing windows for some cash in college,
Yeah, I remember reading about your story and kind of how you got started, and it's really cool to see where you came from, because I imagine when you started, it was just a way of making some extra money, making ends meet, and going on a date or so with your wife. But now it's become something so much bigger that a lot of people, same exact shoes, like they don't expect it to become something this big because they don't even realize it's possible. So when you started, did you see it coming to this point, or is this kind of like a complete shock to you?
It's a good question. I think I was afraid to dream a little bit because I think there was some level of, hey, maybe that could happen, but definitely no. Brandon, I got to give Brandon Vaughn a lot of credit for that, because there's a ton of self-limiting beliefs that he references and others in the coaching space. But I'm a big believer of that. I've witnessed it and seen it myself. I think we're a little bit afraid to set those big goals, and without them, it's just not going to if it happens, it's not going to happen as fast as it could. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point because a lot of people probably don't want to admit it, but the reason they're not growing, it's their own limiting beliefs. They're too scared of what could happen if that were to happen. They don't believe it's possible. They don't think they deserve it. Like all these things. These are all limiting beliefs telling them they can't make it happen. But if you just, I'm sure the second you kind of push that out of the way and realize you can make it happen, that's probably when things took off for you.
It's so true. When I actually first met Brandon, and this the whole thing, I promise won't be about Brandon, but I do feel a lot of gratitude towards the relationship and the time he spent there. The guy's got a big heart for people and the industry. But the first time I met him, we were up at Josh Latimer's house for one of the AGS events, and I still have the little wood tile that he made us say, "Hey, what?" Right? He gave us a permanent marker. We were all sitting around our little tables, and he says, "What's holding you back?" And I remember writing on that tile, "Fear," um, because that was, I think I, at least for me, had it pretty accurately, name. It wasn't capital. It wasn't at the time. I think I had made $800,000 or $900,000. It was one of our most profitable years, even to date. It was a great year in 2018, but again, I was miserable. I was squeezing the life out of myself, my family, and everyone, and it just didn't. It felt like it was a house of cards, and really trying to um, invest into the company for its long-term growth and sustainability. Fear was really holding me back. A lot of personal things as well as financial ones.
Gotcha. When you say that you used to work, 60, 70 hours a week, you were miserable, you hated it. Was it because, well, let me ask you, let's backtrack a little bit. Did you have like a lot of team members at that time, or were you kind of wearing a lot of hats at that point?
I was wearing a lot of hats. At that size, I didn't know, as we went about my daily activities, I didn't know what hat I was wearing because I was just going so fast. I couldn't like compartmentalize, this is a marketing role that I'm taking for this hour, or this is a CSR role or a sales role or a scheduling role. It was all just intuitive. I knew how to solve problems and I would do it, so I was just constantly just baking the cake. There was no like documented process on anything. And as such, like the book Traction says, where the visionary is like um, humming a song and he thinks it's a real humdinger and everyone's listening to it and can hear it, but no one else knows what tune he's playing in his own mind. That was definitely me. And I was lucky and fortunate to have a friend like Cole who stuck through and has witnessed us together build out a playbook that we can communicate. This is what we do. This is who we are. This is the problems we solve. This is how we go about doing it. So long-winded way of saying, man, it was just controlled chaos, and we had probably 18 to 20 people at that size. So revenue per head was a little bit higher, which led to higher profitability. But man, anyone who was around it, it was like a pressure cooker, it's going to pop at some point.
Yeah. You feel like because you're just going so quick, you just didn't have the time to step back and build out the SOPs and all that, or do you feel like almost you didn't trust someone else to do what you're doing? Like no one could do what you're doing, which a lot of business owners they get in that same mindset.
Well said. I think it was a probably a convoluted blend of that plus probably a few more,
Mm.
um, yeah. One time I heard a man say, "Does a fish know he's in water?" And I think that's how I felt. I was to some degree I was ignorant, you know, as well as there was fear between control issues of no one can do it as good as I can. Um, the fear of the unknown with the lack of profitability, what could happen with the customers, and some of those are reasonable fears, but at some point they can become irrational ones too, or ones that you at least need to figure out if it's worth stepping through and trying to solve them.
Hmm. Cool. So, that's awesome. A lot of people don't, they never end up trusting other people. I've spoken with so many people who have been doing this for decades. They refuse to trust anyone to do what they're doing. So that's the reason they stay stagnant. But you trusted people, you gave them the control and it's obviously worked in your favor because the business is doing awesome now.
Yeah, I think on that note though, it's not to get too philosophical because that's not definitely not what I'm paid for, but I've heard also people say when the pain of continuing what you're doing exceeds the pain of the unknown, it, it people start to change. And having a time horizon or perspective can help with that because you can, if what you're doing makes you miserable and you don't want to do it any further and you feel trapped, then at some point you're going to have to find a way around it, and
Yeah.
um, that's where I think I was at. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And even though the finances were there for, with relatively speaking within the industry, you know, um, we were a great success for those who knew the numbers, and I was aware of that. I was just tired of being tired. I didn't want to do it anymore, and so it was time for a change. And for some people, I think some of it too was circumstantially in my life. My wife and I were like 29, 30 years old, and we wanted to have a family. And I just knew intuitively, like, man, I was made for more than just like trying to grind out an extra $100,000 of profit every year on my business. Like, I want to slow down a little bit. I want to have a family. I want to invest in my marriage. I want that to be healthy. I'd like to grow up, raise a family, have some kids, be involved in special relationships locally in the community. And when you work 70 hours a week, man, that's just difficult to do.
Yeah, that's really well said. Like you could have continued doing what you're doing, and now this would be like what, 5, 6 years later. Who knows where the business would be now? Maybe you just discontinued it because you are so burnt out, and maybe you came to hate the industry. Instead, you decided to just build a real business with real people running it, and now the business has, grown like crazy since then.
Yeah, and what's funny is the business. I was actually approached in that year when I met Brandon, and the reason I reached out to him is because I had heard of his story about selling All Clean, and I had someone who came from corporate America. I think he worked at Siemens and GE, and I remember even to this day getting his email where it kind of had a headline of like interested in selling KC Power Clean or something like that, and thinking it's probably some phishing scam or um, I hadn't received those at the time. But I responded to him and met with him, and the guy was real. He actually came up with he was a Harvard MBA grad, and basically his story was, I'm tired of being a corporate cog. He was 39 years old. He too wanted to slow down his pace of life, and he was looking at a very fragmented home service space. And mind you, this was back in 2018. And he just said it seems like the power wash world could be a great world to try to get involved with. He made actually a considerable seven-figure offer at the time that was fair, and I think he would have probably followed through with it. But man, I was so oblivious to it. So I remember looking at this thing, saying, "Man, this is a house of cards." That year we had made like $800,000 profit, and just thinking, who would want to touch this? Like, who would want to buy this? Internally, I was looking at it with such disdain because I think I was such a slave by it. Because I had no systems, I had no team, we didn't have an operating structure. I was the bottleneck, even though with that, to my own benefit, like or to be fair to myself, I had high capacity. Um, I was able to accomplish a lot, but it was miserable. Um, Nevertheless, yeah, that was the point when Brandon said, "You got to pause. Don't sell it." Even if selling was one day a good route for you, um, his actual question to me was, "Why do you want to sell? What's your why?" And I didn't. I said, "I don't know. I just thought about cheap golf and money, and thought about what I can do with it." And I respect him because very gracefully he kind of reminded me, um, I probably shouldn't do it. When I challenged him, what my words were, because I'm a challenger on the Enneagram. I'm gonna call it like I see it. I'm not afraid of conflict. I remember either through Facebook Messenger or a phone call, I said, "What is it about you selling All Clean that would tell me not to sell my business when I have a decent offer on the table?" And he paused for like 3 seconds and he said, "Because you're running from something and I was running to something." And that pierced me. And I was like, "Oh, that's so true. I'm afraid. I don't want to go through the next level or evolution of KC Power Clean." And I knew I had hit like that ceiling. And to take it any further, I was going to have to develop myself, my leadership skills, my knowledge, the things, I was going to have to step into an unknown that I just felt scared and uncomfortable by. And he was true. He hit the nail right on the head.
Wow, that's super interesting. So you had a super attractive business, got an amazing offer for it, but deep down you just knew it wasn't genuinely sellable. So you didn't go this route of selling it. You decided, I'm going to make this a real business, build it to sell. Or I don't know if that's still a goal, but now it is in a place where if you wanted to sell, you could do so without it, all crumbling down when you exit.
Yeah, and what's so funny about that whole space of private equity or any kind of mergers is the business probably has a similar or smaller um, market valuation today considering last year's financial situation than it did in 2018. And yet I would bet on this business 100x over the one I had. Or if I were an investor, I would value it 10 times more than the one that existed in 2018, because it's so much healthier and stronger, and the potential is so much stronger. And to your point, yeah, there's not necessarily a desire to sell, or it would be the desire to have options. I would like, kind of like when you fix up a home, even with the intent to sell it, people say like they want to keep it, because now it's all fixed up. Like, why would you want to sell it? You replace all the doors, the windows, everything looks beautiful. It's a great home now. That's the goal, is it not? To have the options in life to say, if circumstance were to require it, we could sell. But if not, we love what we do, and it doesn't feel like work, because we're passionate about pouring into the 30 to 60 hours we can choose to put into the business at the pace we want.
For sure. And even you're right. And even if the end goal isn't to sell, it's still good to build to sell, because it does get you to the point where you're not working 60, 70 hours a week. You're working, like, how much would you say you're working at this point?
It ebbs and flows. I do feel, I think the simple answer is probably 35 hours a week, but it can definitely still cruise up to 50 hours. I do love it. It also still can be very painful. There's still a lot of really rough seasons. It's just challenging. There's always going to be those challenges in business.
Mhm.
But the only way to really, for me to look back on that, is to really zoom out and see the progress year by year. But I don't know what I'd do myself if I had 40 less hours every week in work. I don't know where I'd spend it. So I choose to work. I don't really have. I thought I had an ambition to grow something that was completely passive. I'm not at that stage. I'm not even 38 years old. I'm about to be in a few weeks, but uh, I like to work. I like to pour. I think it's important for me to have a sense of purpose every day, and who I pour into, and what I do, and what I pursue. So I'm solely focused on KC Power Clean. There's no other ventures for me right now.
Cool. Well, so just to backtrack a little bit, we were kind of talking about how you decided to go the route of building a team, building it the right way, and having everything in place. And now you're at the point where you have a few departments. So can you kind of like run us through what the structure looks like, what departments you have, I guess the leadership and employees beneath those departments, kind of just breaking that down for us?
Yeah, I think I don't know how many of your audience would love this, but I'd love to share my screen. If Do I have that ability on the Zoom?
Yeah, let me okay, you're good to go.
I can pull up. I really love this tool called 90.io, and it's one of the. Let me hit the accountability chart. It's one of the glues that holds our operating system together. But one of the features of this program is you can really build into your accountability chart and plug in the people with the roles and responsibilities. So myself and Cole are the visionary integrator in the company. Um, RG is solely the marketing person right now, but he's had in various seasons different assistants. RG is actually a contract worker in the Philippines, but he works with us full time. And man, we're voxing all day, every day, sending voice messages back to each other and going through iterations. But he really helps make the phone ring. Sales management has still been filled by Cole, but underneath him, um, he has a CSR manager. Alex actually helps with a lot of the inbound sales for a lot of our residential customers. And then Marlon and Herman are our senior estimators and project managers. They're primarily working with HOAs, with contractors. Um, and then John Johnson's really someone who works with our VIPs as an account manager. So a lot of our recurring work, we call the ARR. A lot of people refer to MRR, the recurring revenue aspect.
Mhm.
We really noticed a gap historically that was one of those things that I tried to always fulfill. And as great as I thought I was in those big relationships, I thought I was the only one that should be talking to them. I started to realize that my time restrictions, my capacities didn't allow me to respond as readily as someone that was their sole job. So whether they had an emergency out at a property, John fills that role. And then we actually got rid of someone who was specifically working with HOAs doing new business development for the HOA community for like CAIs and IREM, but we no longer have that person. So that's one of the voids we have on our accountability chart, which could be a helpful tool for some of your people, because what I would, if we could pause here before we hop into every department, even at $100,000, to some extent, every one of these positions still exist in most power wash companies. There's someone still trying to make the phone ring, even if it's a vendor, whether they partner with you at Evolve. Um, Someone has to fulfill those roles and responsibilities to create some level of awareness to the marketplace. Someone has to help nurture and cater to those leads, those qualified leads, and walk them down a path to answer the questions and price things out. Someone's got to actually schedule it. We put our scheduling in the operations department. So Sam has been with us going on 6 years, and he's our operations manager, and he has a couple assistants, and he also manages the fleet and the shop and the backstage part of the operations to make sure inventories are there and the equipment runs. And then our front stage service fulfillment's done by our 5-star technicians. Mike Saravo runs the night shift, and he has about 8 or 9 technicians. We have a San Diego branch where we have a little turnover there that we have to fill. But then we also have our 5-star day shift supervisor. You can argue that he can be under Sam, but his one-on-one mentorship actually is coming directly to Cole. So we moved him up. And that's one of the neat little features on this drag and drop thing. And then administratively, we have HR and finance and some of the other positions filled over here by our scheduling team, which they came up with the fun name, the Capacity Canimals, which is speaks to our can-do attitude. Whenever someone needs something done, we always find a way we can get it done. So capacity is a big word in our company, where we're always looking ahead at how much, we put people in trucks. So how much do we have, and are we measuring next week's potential sales, and are we looking to simplify it so people can do the job, or convert those sales and get people on the calendar and get those technicians on the road to go solve people's problems.
This is awesome. I mean, I think having the actual visual of it so people can see, who responds to who leads what department, all these different heads. I think the visual of it makes it a lot easier to digest, which is really awesome. And I bet from your point of view, looking back at it, you held all those roles at one point. And you said so yourself, like all these roles exist in your business. It just to what extent? At one
Yeah.
point, especially when you're doing 60 to 70 hours, you're probably doing a majority of those roles. And what probably happened with you, and what I suggest to a lot of people, you're going to have all these roles. Once one thing starts taking up enough of your time where you say, let me hire someone and delegate it, and you buy back your time, then you will hire that person and you wear the rest of the hats until you hire someone else. So is that kind of like what happened with you? Like when one thing just ate up too much of your time, you delegated it and then worried about the other stuff?
That's a constant game, and I don't foresee it ever ending. But magic happens when pen hits the paper, and writing these things out just helps visualize and help digest. What am I doing? Like you said, what do I need to delegate, so that way I can be freed up to work on the next thing. And oddly enough, you'll find that your business probably exists just like every other business. EOS has a great book called Process, and in it they state that every company is basically a collection of people and processes, and every business under the sun likely has 5 to 12 core processes, and they all of them generally have a marketing component, maybe 1 or 2 sales components, 2 or 3 fulfillment or service or operations components, a finance component, a people component, an operating component. But pretty much all businesses are at least in the service space, feel like they really follow that theme. So most org charts will actually kind of mimic each other. So
So
if they catch nothing else, hopefully maybe that gives them a little inspiration of how they can start to format and arrange their thinking and line of sight towards what do they build towards, and what do they hire and delegate for next.
yeah, for sure. So at this point, at this stage in your business, would you say a majority of your efforts is essentially managing people and just steering them in the right direction?
Yes. Leadership and management and accountability. Our company went through a couple years where learning actually accountability. Our business is a people business, right? We're not, with that. It's very difficult to scale, but it's also there's a lot of emotionally taxing parts of it too. But it's also super rewarding. So investing in people is very important, because that's all we are. Is we put people in trucks to go clean things. So really trying to make sure that the culture set, people know why they're doing what they're doing. They have the tools to be successful. that they have some level of what success looks like in terms of a measurement, and that's not real complicated stuff. Like our ops team went through a lot of um, refinement in the last 3 months, where we started implementing more and more of the EOS way of life into that particular department. And we revamped a scorecard to simplify it, where all we measure is 5-star reviews, or what we do with these 100% satisfied signs, where we take selfies with people. We lump them as one and the same, because basically it's a metric of someone was thrilled with your work.
Mm.
And then we measure recommendations that we can do. So if we believe cleaning things is good, can you recommend to do more of it on the properties you're at? The AKA upsells. Those are good things. And then also alley-oop leads. So sometimes when people hand out the marketing materials, if they can put their name on it and someone calls in, we can track those. So that way we can really have a fun way to incentivize our people actually being an ambassador, a brand ambassador for the company, and putting out the materials, yard signs, etc. So that's pretty much all we measure on the positive side. The negative side is if there's compliance issues or callbacks or discounts or damages from jobs. But it's not a real complicated scorecard, and it doesn't have to be, because in the end, people need to know that their work matters, whether they do a poor job or a good job, and gives them a sense of purpose when they hop in the truck to give it extra effort and take pride in what they do.
I feel like a lot of people, that is their biggest struggle, is getting other people to actually care about the vision and want to go out and do an amazing job. Like a lot of people have technicians that just couldn't care less, and they're just there for the paycheck. And then the difference between that and a real business that is truly scalable and seeing a lot of success is people that genuinely love the vision, love the mission, they want to support it, and they want to go out and do an amazing job. What would you say is like one of the biggest key differences between what you're doing and then maybe that guy that is struggling to get people to truly commit to their business?
Ooh, well, I can speak from what I'm doing versus what I have done, because I've done it wrong, and I've done it a little bit better than wrong. But I think really trying to, one, it's got to be as simple as possible. And I struggle with that. As you can tell, every answer is like a 9-minute answer, but trying to boil it down and simplify it, because when everything's important, nothing's important. And my new coach talks about my propensity to try to boil the ocean, he says, and that's really what I have some problems with. But to try to stay on point here, I think the key thing is really trying to align incentives so that technicians win when we win. Tommy Mello talks a lot about that in his pot, making sure that the incentives are aligned and where you can create a culture where everybody wins. Fundamentally, that is insanely challenging in California, because it's an extremely litigious environment, and it's not the employees. So hear me clearly. I'm not talking about past employees. They are usually the victims of a very predatory legal environment where there's a lot of bottom feeding attorneys who like to expose labor law violations. And what starts in California environmentally and legally usually kind of spans across the West Coast and then the East Coast. But labor law violations are an insanely important topic, because at the basis, you have to protect yourself, and you can't build an organization that is going to get sunk with a PAGA lawsuit or any kind of the attorney's fees can get outrageous. And we've gone and fought through many of those for about 10 years. So looking back and keep this as concise as I can, you have to protect yourself from a wage and hour compliance, meal breaks, and beyond that, right? It gets into 401ks, healthcare, all kinds of stuff. But within that, you still have to create an incentive that where a faster an employee works and accomplishes the task, they win too. So building in some kind of a performance pay model where the technician wins, and it's actually computed onto a paychecks in a way where an attorney can't come and seize the castle, is a little bit more challenging sometimes than it sounds. But the simplest way is if you're small, try to keep it simple. If someone goes the extra mile, try to reward them, try to honor them and appreciate them publicly in front of their teammates. And any kind of criticisms, take it private. That'd be probably the simplest way to do it. Trying to build in a system where 40 people can do that consistently and others can manage that system where the inspiration comes without just the owner being the attaboy, culture hero, but you can give tools to a management team to do that. That's been really challenging, if I'm just being honest. And that's taken a lot of years. And we're not fully out of that, but we're coming out of it. And we're hitting our stride, I'll put it. But that part I can't give away on a podcast. That's, that's part of what really goes into the tech stack and the coaching and the engineering that, and frankly, I don't think for a lot of viewers it would even be very helpful.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. But you said something that I thought was very interesting, which I never really heard that saying before, but it makes a lot of sense, is when there's too many, I think you said too many important things or too many important numbers, nothing is important, which is so true. Like if you have basically everything, whether it's on the scorecard, whatever it is, everything is super important. That means everything is basically the same level, which makes nothing important. So
Exactly.
I know you're very big on data, so I guess we can share gifts or gear shifts a little bit. What are some of the like main numbers you look at for success within your business?
Good question. Again, coming from EOS, there's a great book called Get a Grip, which tells a fable or a story of an entrepreneur trying to self-implement or actually hire an implementer. There's a part in that book where, because I laugh looking back, our first rendition of a scorecard, I remember at our leadership team adding in there if the trash was taken out, and it was like, that's not leadership worthy. But to me, it was important because the landlord was like crawling up my backside, really frustrated because we couldn't manage all of our sandblasting media and trash because we didn't have the infrastructure to do it. So at that moment, it was urgent, but long term, it wasn't important. But in the book, Get a Grip, they basically state if you were on an island, and for you, Michael, if you have Evolve Media and you're on a Caribbean vacation, and a waitress comes over and serves you a cocktail, and on that table, it has a little napkin with like 5 to 12 numbers on it. What are the numbers that you would want to know so that you can choose whether or not you're going back on a plane to go home or whether or not you can extend your stay for another 7 days? And the argument from that book is that that's your scorecard. So for us, I really love to know, what did we invoice in the last 7 days? Because in order to send an invoice, we have to get confirmation that the work was completed and that, someone actually approved of us. Actually, they've consented to a bill, right? That's the most important number for us, because I got to know, are we on track or off track to hit budget? Because if we're off track to hit budget, people could lose jobs, and that's not good. And I don't make money. So that's the number one thing, is how much did we bill the last 7 days? And is that's obviously crafted out of our budget. Beyond that, it's really just redacting out, basically reversing a sales funnel, right? How many leads did we get in the last 7 days? What's our booking rate on those leads? Meaning, were they qualified leads? Did we respond to them in time so that they actually want to pursue and get a quote? How many quotes did we actually issue out? What's our close ratio on those? Has our average ticket, even though the close ratio and average ticket for us, we look at monthly, more so than weekly. And then what's our ops quality score? How many callbacks and discounts and damages, or how many invoices are lingering out there from like a project management standpoint that requires some level of completion so that we can actually send the bill, because that starts to eat into our gross margin as well. And then, did we have any regrettable turnover? That's another big one. So it's a way to, at least for us, to say, hey, did anyone leave that or quit or get fired that, it's a way to kind of quickly see if it's anything's issue worthy from an HR standpoint. But that's for the most part our level 10 scorecard that we review. And if things are off track, we drop them down into the issue section and we try to IDS it, as they say in EOS speak, solve it there at the weekly meeting.
Awesome. So now speaking from a more I guess a more general overview of the past, was it 20 or 18 years you've been running the business?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the biggest failure throughout this whole time that you faced in the business?
There's probably a lot there. Good question. Biggest failure. Help me. Maybe you asking it in another way might help me help my mind kind of like tune in on one, because right now I don't know if there's been a lot of pain points.
Yeah, and even if it's not even one thing, I mean, I think just your response alone says a lot to people. The fact that you've had so many failures, but you're still obviously seeing a lot of success with the business. It's going in the right direction. Things are going very well, even despite having all these failures. So that alone is a lesson in itself for the people that are trying to avoid mistakes because they don't want to fail. If you fail forward, like you're just going to learn and grow from there. So just your
Yeah.
reaction alone was great. But yeah, I mean, in regards to failures, like I read on some of your earlier failures, but I think those are more so, just common mistakes on a smaller scale, new to the industry. Like when I think you had put, you bought your new pressure washer and you had put your fuel in, or you put water in it. I forget what exactly it was.
Oh yeah. I think that was a Jobber article you may have come across. But speaking to the for those maybe who are the power washing obviously is a very bootstrappable business that a lot of people use as a side hustle, and they're I've heard it a million times. Should I go full time? Should I not? For myself, I was a college student, and as a sophomore, just passing out flyers, and I was a window washer. It was a good side hustle. Um, I remember buying a power washer. I used to store it in the back of my Toyota 4Runner because we'd lay down the back seats and I just lifted it up there. I was strong and athletic and had a better back. But it it repeatedly get like the smash and grab from a thief because I'd park it out on the street and I wanted to quit multiple times. And I remember my dad encouraging me and saying, "Man, I wanted to go get a job at Yogurtland because I wanted like some ice cream and to hang out with some friends or something, just a cheap, low stress job that I can get some money." And he says, "How many? If you make $500 post tax at Yogurtland and you work 40 hours at all your nights, you give away all your nights, or you wash one house, you know." And he just kind of framed just basically a time matrix, more or less, of like, zoom out a little bit. Like, yeah, I know it sucks. You had another power washer stolen. Um, but it gave me the little encouragement and boost to kind of say, yeah, keep doing it. Buy another power washer. You know, yeah, we were a victim of a little bit of a crime, but it happens. Move on. But circling back to your earlier question, I think one of my propensities that I do wrong is I can lose sight of what's right in front of me. I want to move faster than life generally allows, but I want to be mindful. The other side of that coin is like you also got to be willing to take chances and fail, right? So sometimes going hard and going fast, those can be good blessings as long as they don't knock us off our feet and they're calculated gambles. But in light of that, I think culturally I've failed to celebrate enough wins and build enough camaraderies. One of our values is teamwork, and I'm not the greatest team builder. It's something I have to be super conscientious about because truthfully, I like to spend my nights with my wife and my kids. And if there's a company party that's initiated by a project manager at his house, I kind of look at the invitation like, really? Friday night? That's what I got to go do. But, you go and you have a great time. But I don't think I'm extroverted in that way. And I have to I think that can be deemed as like one of those failures of like, man, as a leader, I need to be more conscientious to really build time into space to celebrate people and their milestones. And that's a big part of team building that I can definitely probably critique myself on.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to that, and that's why probably a lot of people feel they don't deserve to be a leader because of like that exact reason. They feel like they can't lead the team, they can't support them and give them the support they need to really grow. But the fact that even you at your stage, at your level within the business, that's something you faced and still face to this day, but are still able to run an operation of this size. And I'm sure for the most part, you're still, creating that vision and doing a great job at keeping people motivated and accountable and just joyful in the work they're actually doing.
Yeah, thanks. Try the best you can a day at a time. Um, I know that I got a big heart for the people I work with. As leaders, we also have to learn how to protect some of that time and realize that the people we put in place. I think about my service team lead, Sam. He's got a big heart and been working a lot with him to mentor him to make sure that the guys know that how much Sam cares about them and the communication style. Sometimes the delivery, the tone and tenor is so important so that people can actually know that you care because there's some great sayings around that. People don't generally care how much you know until they know how much you care is a common one that we have these little copied, borrowed, phrases that we kind of put on cheap printer paper and like tape them up to the walls. So um, even though it's not beautiful, they're helpful reminders and visuals. And um, we do the best we can with that, while trying to guard our time and have healthy boundaries, which is a complicated thing.
Absolutely. Well, cool. I know we're kind of running down on time now, so I think one of the things I definitely want to speak to you about because it seems like you're very family oriented. You have a big family, and the fact that you used to work like 60, 70 hours a week. I'm sure at that time there's no chance of really having that family time. So I imagine that's why you kind of built your business the way you did. But I guess, when did you realize, I want to have a family, I want to spend time with my wife, my kids, and all that? When did you realize you had to change your business? And then I guess, what did you do to create the business in a way where you could buy back your time and I guess spend more time with your family?
Hmm. That's it's a loaded question because it's an ongoing process that isn't completely solved. But I think the aha moment for me came through some of those challenges and probing questions that people would ask. Even referencing earlier the conversation with my father when I wanted to give up. Within the first few months of the business, is it's helpful sometimes to ponder what life could look like, and really just it's goal setting, vision casting for yourself, and just whatever it is to internalize, to stop and pause and reflect, like, who do I want to be, where do I want to go, what do I want it to look like, and I don't know if that's a singular moment or more for me as a collection of thousands of small micro moments throughout, probably dating back to elementary school, of kind of having that picture of what I want family to look like, right? I recall being a kid in elementary school, my mom asking me about certain families that we admired because I was in a broken home, and I remember being able to think of the Marshalls and the different people. Maybe we all can do that when we sit back and reflect about our childhood, about maybe that picturesque family, and obviously a lot of that to some degrees could be an illusion, and you have to be careful um, what you think exists versus what actually does. But nevertheless, I think the simplest answer is really trying to build towards something that I want, trying to be clear with what it is that I want, and not giving up and working towards that. Um, Being able to buy back the time. Um, it's not so much about the selfish ambition of it being for me, versus ironically of like, how can I empower others to have a position where they can actually serve others, and they can win in the process. Because unfortunately, if you try to view people to use them to get an outcome, they're probably just going to feel manipulated. But if you're along with them in the journey, and for me, it's a level of contentment just to understand, like, hey, this is the business I'm called to, this is the business I'm in. um, it's more helpful for me. I think I'm more impactful than it's something I have to do to get to here. And I think that I would encourage. I don't feel like I'm saying it as eloquently as the last two pages of Traction, where Gino talks about the road to Hana. So if anyone can get their hands on that book and then read that, his final farewell in that book about really just embracing the journey, because when you get there, Hana isn't as beautiful as the road to it. So don't miss the fun, because that's really what it's about, is the memories you make with the people along the way.
Do you feel like you would have been able to get to your business to this point in the time that you have if you didn't have those 60, 70 hours a week? Or do you feel like with what you know now, you could have built it without sacrificing all this time and stress, by just building it differently, I guess, from the start?
Great question. I genuinely question this sometimes, because one of Brandon's sayings is, as a coach, his chief duty is to help collapse time. And I think that knowledge and that enlightenment and that encouragement and motivation, all those things help. Those are great tools to help do that. Nevertheless, there's the other side of that coin of, the knuckle dragging and the pain and agony of going through difficult experiences. Sometimes are necessary, and sometimes those principles that we hold most dear are the ones that we were etched, in our scars. And so I truly don't know. Whatever case, it's fun to ponder. But I know that if I were to go back to do it, having more capital and more wisdom, could definitely do it much faster again. But I don't get to write the second story. I just get to keep writing the one I got.
Yeah. It's an interesting question because if you were to do it again now, knowing what you know, you would have made it so much quicker. But would that have been possible if you didn't go through those experiences? Probably not. Or it would just
Yeah.
take way longer.
Or would I value it much less, you know? And that's an important aspect too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, I think we're kind of running down on time now, so I think that that covers everything I want to discuss today. For anyone that's listening in today and just wants to, I guess, learn a bit more about you, your story, maybe support you in any way, do you have any socials or website anyone can check out?
Yeah, we got a lot on YouTube. Definitely know Steven Spielberg, but we shoot some of our own things and some inspiration out there. And I'm on LinkedIn as well and Facebook. So happy to try to answer and get to anyone's questions as fast as I can. Thanks for letting me come on and do my favorite thing in the world, which is talk about myself. So been a fun hour.
Yeah, absolutely. It was super valuable. So again, I appreciate you hopping on. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Michael.